next speaker in this session is somebody who is a tireless advocate for all aspects of longevity research and improvement. I've known him for a number of years. He is always active connecting, but he is particularly bringing his legal insight into many questions of how organizations can set up and operate in this modern world. His name is Paul Spiegel. He is the Chief Legal Officer for Longevity Plan. He is the Honorary Consul for San Marino. He is a member of the Board of Directors of Humanity Plus, and perhaps most relevant to the talk he's going to give, he is the legal advisor to VitaDAO. And if you don't know what VitaDAO is, well, the good news is Paul is going to explain it. He's here to represent VitaDAO and to open our eyes to new possibilities. Paul, take it away.
Thank you, David. See if I can get this where I need it. That ought to do it. The acoustics in this room are so good, you really don't need a microphone, but it's handy to have one all the same. So, Javier, I want to thank you for giving a good introduction to some of the things I'm going to talk about. There may be a little bit of repetition, but then that's fine. Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, and cryptocurrency is becoming ubiquitous in the world. If you haven't already learned about it, you will certainly learn a lot more before the end of this session. There are two questions that people always ask about cryptocurrency. One is, what's it really good for? And two, why is it so complicated? And I'm here to answer a couple of those questions for you. It's not really very complicated, and I'll explain that in a second. But as far as what it's good for, well, there is a lot of money pouring into longevity right now. It's pouring in a classic fashion. Top-down companies are making large investments and basically building intellectual property, which they then profit from. That's not necessarily the best thing for society. So at VitaDAO, we have a better idea. If this works, okay, what am I doing wrong here? No. I don't suppose, oh, there we go. Thank you. So, what is VitaDAO? VitaDAO is a concept, really. We hope to create a world where longevity therapeutics are collectively funded, owned and governed by those that will benefit from them through an open structure, moving longevity funding from development out of a single institution and into decentralized organizations which put transformative therapies into the reach of everyone. Now, that's a big deal. It's a big idea, and hopefully we'll make it clear. There are a few concepts that you need to understand, and some of them Javier has gone through, but I'll go through them again because they're in my deck. Rather quickly, decentralization. It's the transfer of control of an activity or an organization to multiple stakeholders rather than to a single one. That seems like a pretty simple concept, and really it is. It's just one that we don't use very often right now. Blockchain is a growing list of records called blocks that are linked together using cryptography. Blockchain is trustless. That doesn't mean it's untrustworthy. It just means it doesn't require trust to operate. It's fully decentralized. It's a peer-to-peer network. It is immutable data storage spread over a network of participants that are often referred to as nodes. Now, this is an old concept brought new again, honestly. There has been something in the art world that has existed for well over a century called provenance. Let's say, for instance, you bought a painting. You wanted to buy a painting by Mark Rothko, a great abstract impressionist painter. Mark's been dead since 1969, so you know that you're not buying it directly from him. Probably you're not buying it directly from his estate or his dealer. You're probably buying it second, third, fourth, fifth hand through a chain of control. That is essentially what a blockchain is. You go out to an art dealer, you buy your Rothko, and the art dealer is selling it on behalf of somebody, and he knows who had it before he did. And the guy who had it before he did knows who had it before he did, and so forth and so on, going all the way back to the original art gallery, Marlborough Galleries, that handled Mark Rothko's paintings before he died. Now, this is effectively a blockchain. It's not digital. It's based entirely on trust. But when you buy your painting, you can trace the transactions that were necessary to bring this painting from the original artist down to you. Now, an example of this is the Ethereum network. You can look that up. I'm not going to take time on it. Cryptocurrency. Javier's done a great job of explaining that. He's been talking about Bitcoin. There are plenty of other currencies, altcoins as he put them. They are digital currencies or tokens in which transactions are verified and records are maintained by a decentralized system using cryptography rather than by some centralized authority. Now that's sort of where the difference is between provenance in the art world and electronic cryptocurrency today. You can see centralization, by the way, in action on the two diagrams that we've got here. Centralization means that decisions all start from a single place and get spread out, whereas decentralization means they're kind of scattered over a network. Everybody gets to have their say in things. But there's another key concept that we need to discuss. It's called a smart contract. A smart contract is a self-enforceable digital representation of a traditional contract. The idea, like blockchain, is not new. It was introduced in 1994 by Nick Szabo to decrease the level of risk to contracting parties. As a lawyer, I love that concept. Now, smart contracts languished for a while because computing power really didn't have time to catch up with it for a long time. But it was popularized by the Ethereum network, which allowed smart contracts at scale. A smart contract contains the fundamentals of every product on the Ethereum network. Now, if you take a look at the diagram that I have here, oh, the heck with it. Who needs a pointer? Who needs a clicker? There we go. Let's say that Bob and John want to buy or sell a house respectively. The smart contract automates that process. You match the buyer and the seller. You put your assets, being the money and the deed to the house, into a smart contract, which holds the assets until a certain set of conditions are satisfied or not satisfied. If the conditions are satisfied, then the smart contract automates the clearing of the transaction. It distributes asset A, being the deed to the house, to the person buying, and asset B, the money, to the person selling. And it's done all through digital currency. It's much easier and much more secure, honestly, than the present system that we have. If any of you have ever bought a house, you'll understand that. This is still not working right. Thank you. The next question, what is a DAO? You may hear a lot about that. Unless you know Chinese philosophy, you should learn about what a DAO is. It's a decentralized, autonomous organization. It's basically a highly complex form of a smart contract. The bylaws of the decentralized organization are embedded into the code of a smart contract, and the DAO is run by token governance rules, which, again, is not such a complicated concept. It's one token, one vote. The more tokens you have, the more voting power you have. It's very much like an ordinary company, a corporation or an LLC, but it's fully decentralized. The decision-making power does not rest at the top and get spread down through the organization. You can see the two diagrams that we have up there. One is the traditional top-down organization. There's a CEO who works for the shareholders, and then there's levels of management that go down until you get down to the guys who are sweeping up after the conference. There's only one legal entity, and it works on a basis of employment contracts with everybody underneath the top guy. Now, this means many layers of management for coordination and enforcement of processes. It means many information and decision bottlenecks, as well as several sources of corruption. By contrast, a decentralized autonomous organization does not have a top-down management structure. There are users who interact with other users, who interact with other users to make things happen. There is no centralized legal entity. There are no employment contracts. We create machine consensus around token government rule sets and smart contracts instead of legal employment contracts. That is the essence of a DAO. Now, the big question that VitaDAO exists to answer is what is the most impactful thing that a DAO could do with $1 million today? And we thought about this for a while, and we decided that what we needed was a decentralized collective to fund early-stage longevity research. Now, our mission is to extend the healthy human lifespan by researching, financing, and commercializing longevity therapeutics in an open, accessible, and democratic manner. VitaDAO and its members are committed to nurturing and developing the intellectual property, the licenses, and the data sets that result from the projects that it supports. And by supports, we mean funding. Yes? Now, at VitaDAO, bears repeating, we're creating a world where longevity therapeutics are collectively funded, owned, and governed by those that will benefit from them. That would mean patients and the public, through an open structure, moving longevity funding and development out of single institutions and into decentralized organizations, putting transformative therapies in reach of everyone. Let me say that again, in reach of everyone. The top-down structure doesn't quite work that way. Now, our ecosystem may look complicated, but it's actually not all that complicated. We have our members. Members fund the DAO. They buy tokens. The tokens were originally issued through something called a gnosis auction, which I will explain in a bit. The tokens create the funds by which the DAO acquires assets, either generalized data or more traditional IP. One of the ways we do this is we fund laboratories. They get our money, we get the data, and we actually own that data as the DAO. Same thing with generalized IP. We trade that information in various ways, either to pharma companies or to other third parties, or through the Ocean Marketplace, which is a decentralized marketplace, where we trade our data and we receive funds. The funds go back into the system. That funds further research. It hopefully grows and continues in a larger and larger fashion. To make this easier, thank you, we have here the DAO. The DAO sends out funds to data research and acquisition. We get back IP. We take that IP, we license it either through the Ocean Marketplace or on a single or multi-level licensing, or through the sale of intellectual property outright, or through co-development deals where we participate in the development of that IP. In either case, we get funds for doing so. That's how we run, hopefully how we will grow. Now, how did we start? We started through a fair launch through something called a gnosis auction. Gnosis auction sounds strange, but it's really pretty simple when you get down to it, as most of these concepts are. In a gnosis auction, let me just check my time here. Yes, in a gnosis auction, people bid on the coins that they are going to acquire, the tokens that they're going to acquire. There is a system where everybody puts in their bid. They say, how much do I think it's worth? And they bid on these coins, these tokens, which are then calculated by an algorithm. It takes the average price of the coin, and that is the price for the launch. Now, anybody that has bid higher than that number gets their coins in the auction at the average price that was established by everybody. Anybody that bid less, well, they don't get their coins because they lost the auction. That's unfortunate, but that's kind of how it works. Now, in the original VitaDAO Gnosis auction, there were 635 participants, of which most of them acquired coins, tokens. I use the words interchangeably. Technically, we're tokens. The largest bid in volume was actually quite large. It was about 80% of our total coin volume. And the closing token price was 80 cents per token. Now, the range of price since the auction has fluctuated in kind of the usual fashion for cryptocurrency. After the first day or so, the price was bid way up, and then people sold to try and take quick profits. But then the price started to stabilize. It has ranged between a low of 60 cents per token and about $1.76 high, with roughly $1.34 being the current value. I haven't checked it lately. And the funding that's raised at the current ETH price, the current value of what we have sold, is about $7 million. And that's $7 million we can use to fund longevity research. Thank you. So why did we decide to merge cryptocurrency and longevity? Well, there are a lot of similarities. The most important one is longevity has the potential to be to traditional medicine what cryptocurrency is to traditional finance. In a word, it changes the terms of the debate. Now, both of these have long been dismissed by the traditional system due to their high-risk nature. And both of them are now coming into their own. If anybody has any doubt about that, look at the number of companies that are forming to develop longevity assets. Now, what VitaDAO does is to align the most forward-thinking economics with the most forward-thinking science to create the greatest impact. Now, there are plenty of high-net-worth individuals right now with crypto wealth who want to do something impactful with their wealth. And so the spaces are incredibly aligned. What we have here with the DAO the VitaDAO. Some unique features. We will actually own the intellectual property assets resulting from our projects. We are not a development company per se, we just fund these things, and in exchange we acquire rights to the assets. Now, that would sound exclusionary, except that members can join VitaDAO by contributing work, or they can join by contributing funds. In other words, anybody that wants to be a part of VitaDAO can become a part of VitaDAO. The easiest thing to do is to buy tokens, but if you don't have the funds to buy the kind of tokens you want, you can put yourself to work for the cause, and you will be awarded tokens by doing so. Now, right now, we're going to be providing funding in the range of $50,000 to $1 million. That seems a little bit small, but remember, we only launched our token on June 23rd, 2021. So we're growing, and we're growing quickly. What we're doing is we're funding early-stage, high-risk, high-reward longevity projects. Because we are decentralized, because we make all of our decisions pretty quickly on our own, we can make funding decisions quickly as well, sometimes in as few as 2 to 3 weeks. And by doing so, we hope to build a large community of academics and researchers through a global incentive scheme to promote and advance the cause of longevity worldwide. Now, the structure we've sort of discussed. We have members. They are token holders. They've achieved that status either through purchasing their tokens through the Gnosis auction or by purchasing them now on the open market. We also have working groups that actually operate things. Again, this is totally decentralized. If you have certain talents, you can join a certain working group. For example, the longevity working group does due diligence and evaluates projects. We also have a legal working group, of which I am an advisor and a member. A technical group, a governance group, tokenomics awareness, operations, and others are being created all the time. We also have service providers, the standard third-party service providers, CROs, that would be contract research organizations, law firms, accountants, consultants, graphic designers, you name it. And again, as a growing business, we are growing those all the time as well. Now, how do we work? Have any of you heard of Discord? It's an online community. It's basically a very complex chat room where we have, you can see on the left up here, various different groups. We have various individuals on the right who are participating, either currently or in the past. And then in the middle, we have general chat. And in the general chat, or in the working group chat, we make our decisions as to what we're going to do. At that point, we put them up for a vote. Now, to do that, we put up proposals. You can see on this list VDP 1, VDP 2, VDP 6, etc. VDP means VitaDAO proposal. And these are proposals that are put before the DAO in a more concrete way so that we can talk about them and refine them and decide whether or not they make sense. If we decide they do make sense, we put them up to a vote, and this is basically how it works. VDP 5 is funding for Morten Scheibe-Knudsen's lab in Denmark. There's proposal summary, there are proposal details, and then there's a vote. Now, the vote is interesting. You have your tokens. However many tokens you have represents however much voting power you have. So you put these tokens up essentially in a buffer. This creates guard against double voting. You put your tokens into a buffer, then you vote based on the number of tokens that are in the buffer. You don't have to put all of your tokens in the buffer, but most people do. It maximizes their voting power. Once a quorum has been achieved, the vote takes place, and if it passes, the matter is adopted, and then we go out and we implement it. Now, we've talked about IP, the DAO holding its IP. How does this work? Well, we've already described how a proto-blockchain worked in the art market. Has anybody heard of an NFT? It's called a non-fungible token. Okay, a number of you have. An NFT, a non-fungible token, is a unique identifier that can be attached to an asset. Now, that may not matter so much when the asset is tangible, say a Rothko painting. But let's say that the painting in question, the artwork in question, is digitized. You can see up to the right in the left-hand column there is a digital painting by an artist named Beeple. The work has never existed in tangible form. So of course, because it's digital, it can be copied infinitely, and each copy looks exactly like the first one. The question then is how to define what is the original of that artwork, because the original has value. In fact, it can have substantial value. So, Beeple, the artist, put this work called Everydays into an NFT, and he put that up for auction. Can anybody tell me roughly how much that work sold for at auction through its NFT? Give me a guess. You think, yes? I think it was $69 million, but that's a really good guess. Most people think, you know, $100,000, $200,000, it's digital. But it's not anymore. It's an NFT. It is a unique piece of ownership. And the person with the original piece of work can look at his NFT and say, yep, I've got the original of Everydays and everything else is just a copy. And that's why it auctioned for $69 million. So we are applying the same thing to intellectual property involving biopharma, longevity research specifically, by attaching early stage biopharma assets like an R&D license to an NFT. We can make IP natively digital and discoverable, traceable and fundable. It allows the IP to enter Web 3, which is a decentralized version of the internet, not controlled by large internet corporations, but totally decentralized. It can be held by a DAO. It can be tokenized. It can be made the focus of a liquid market, collateralized and borrowed against. More so, because of the blockchain, every time this data is accessed, a record of access can be transparently viewed. The history and the ownership record is known, stored on the blockchain. And also because of smart contracts, you can program interesting things into it. Funding events, for example. Every time somebody buys an asset, every time it changes hands, the original creator of that asset, the original artist, the original scientist, whatever, can receive a percentage so that the creator doesn't, you know, like the original Nike swoosh sold for $300, I think. It's worth a little bit more than that now. Now, we work through an affiliate called Molecule. Molecule's IP NFT framework, that's intellectual property, non-fungible token, creates a new fundraising mechanism for early stage research. It creates a new technical framework that allows NFTs to be combined with federated data storage and access control, and it creates a new legal framework using sublicensing agreements to enable on-chain entities to hold IP. Now, we're running a little short on time here, I think. 5 minutes? 2 minutes. Okay, we'll whip through this quickly. You'll just have to look at these for yourself. We go from legal contracts to smart contracts, creating something called JSON, which is a JavaScript object network. The metadata JSON contains metadata about the contract and therapeutic, the type of NFT in the industry, and then it creates encrypted IP, patents, or data, which contain detailed therapeutic information. We can also add a legal contract if we want an encrypted form. Now, we have ongoing challenges. These will be challenges no matter where we stand. We're always trying to simplify the onboarding process to find a task or a project without having to go around in too many circles. We're always improving our cultural practices by learning from other DAOs. There is, for example, TEC, the Token Engineering Commons, which allows people to exchange information on how better to operate, create a DAO. Here's looking at you, TEC. And we're also integrating our experience in lean startups with DAO practices. We are bridging the worlds of cryptocurrency and biotech, mostly for the purposes of longevity, but it doesn't have to be that way. We're also building a reputation beyond the crypto space, because as we grow, we can do more good work. Now, you've been listening to what I've been saying here, and I'm sure you're asking yourself, hey, how do I get involved in this? Well, it's really not that complicated. You've heard me say this a lot lately. It really is not complicated. Join the community. We work via Discord. Look us up on our website. Become a part of the Discord conversation. The community is open for anybody to join. You don't have to buy in. You can join a working group and share your expertise. If you do and you create value, you'll be compensated for that. Are you a researcher? Great. Apply for funding. You go to our website. We're funding projects at a level, as I said, between $50,000 and $1 million, but that number will rise as our asset base rises. And if you're really, truly inspired, you can build your own DAO. We'd be happy to give you some ideas on that. The space is blossoming. There's an enormous amount of room for innovation. And we think that our innovation, the concept of using cryptocurrency to fund longevity research in a decentralized manner, is going to change the playing field and allow for much greater work to be done in the field of longevity. With that, I want to thank VitaDAO proper. We are a decentralized organization. So I want to thank the DAO. I also want to thank Tyler Galato, one of the original founders of VitaDAO, who also is one of the original creators of this deck that I've been using. And if you need further information, you can contact me after this talk, or you can find us at vitadao.io, or of course, vitadao.com. And I also want to thank, by the way, TransVision for allowing me the opportunity to give this talk and present this information. So thank you, Jose.
Questions for Paul from the audience? There's one from Natasha down near the front here. Keep talking, it will come on in a minute.
Keep talking. Oh, thank you, Paul. That was an exceptional talk, and I think VitaDAO certainly has some promise and some delightful potential for the longevity industry. My question is a little bit off the cuff. I'm more interested in the cybersecurity, having worked with the FBI and the red team, blue team matches, and looking at how you can hack and break through systems. And breaking into blockchain and cryptocurrency is kind of a black hat theme. So with VitaDAO, what type of protection are you taking with your law background and your understanding of intellectual property and rights, et cetera? What type of protection are you taking to keep these black hatters at bay? Because they love a tasty morsel of what to hack. And the more we are told it can't be hacked because of fingerprint, because of cold money, and all the different attributes associated with the blockchain little vehicles along the way, not being one total unit, that they're impossible to hack, but not so. So in your view, how would you protect or how would you advise VitaDAO on this topic?
At the present time, we are working through the Ethereum network, which has its own protections. And we do the best we can to use the most current and most sophisticated protections for our tokens. You have put your finger on an interesting question. As long as there are stores of value, there will always be people trying to steal them. As Javier mentioned, when people first created gold as a medium of exchange, there were people trying to steal that gold. There were also counterfeiters, maybe not counterfeiting gold, but when we were dealing with feathers and seashells, there were people out there creating fake feathers and seashells. This is not a problem that is easily solved. We do not make guarantees of security.
I love that answer. Now that was so brilliant because admitting up front it can be broken, but we're doing everything to continually to protect it is what we want to know, because with VitaDAO and with our cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin or whatever method of transaction one is taking, it's still our biomedical information that we're also protecting within the blockchain.
Yes. I mean, look, find me a method of exchange that cannot be stolen, that cannot be broken. Maybe real estate. You can't just pick it up and carry it away in the dead of night. But even so, you can falsify a deed. You can falsify a contract that says that you have certain rights in that real estate.
So let me just quickly follow up, because I think this is really important for the panel. Would you suggest or would you advise, as a lawyer, as an attorney, that those of us who are knowledgeable about and care about the future of blockchain and longevity, and also Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and longevity for the investing in venture capitalists, et cetera, do you suggest we go to the Black Hat conferences and really listen to what's going on and maybe start speaking at them?
I'm sorry, that those lack what?
Do you suggest we go to the Black Hat conferences? They're the biggest conferences in the world on how to hack through these things, and pay attention, and maybe even David and you all speak at them?
Absolutely, yes. Like anything else. I mean, you don't leave your purse on a park bench. Protecting your assets is a very basic thing. Now, we at VitaDAO do our best to make sure that our tokens are secure. And every time we wake up and think, hey, here's a new way to secure our tokens, there's somebody else who says, just try it. And it's a constant race between the people that want to secure their cryptocurrency assets and the people that want to rip them off. I've been burned once or twice in cryptocurrency. There was the famous Mt. Gox example of Bitcoin many years ago, where I don't even know the amount of cryptocurrency that disappeared, but it just disappeared. It was untrackable. And that was a
And
shame.
time for one more question in the audience before we move on. Is there somebody? Where are the hands? Max?
Well, I
Max,
noticed that
if I could just amplify before I mentioned Mount Gox. People should not live in fear of Mount Gox because it inspired greater and greater degrees of security, which we enjoy today. I'm sorry, Max?
I noticed in your presentation you had, I think, decentralization equals democracy, and democracy popped up a couple of times. And I want to confirm my suspicion, which is you're using democracy as basically good. And it's not really the case that DAOs have to be democratic, because democracy to me isn't that good a thing. It's actually, as Churchill suggested, it's the least bad thing that we currently have. It still means the domination of the minority by the majority. Can't you use the same kind of DAO system and these virtual communities with the rules built in to have a quite different system, like supermajorities voting on certain things and much different structures than we are commonly using? So not strictly speaking democracy unless you're using that in a kind of a very general sense of better than authoritarian.
Well, it is democracy in the sense that everybody has a vote. Some people have more votes than others, in very much the same way that, if you have more tokens than the next guy, you have more of a vote. However, everybody has the right to a discussion. The democratic process exists in the consideration of the projects. As it works right now in our so-called democracy in the United States, people don't really have a vote unless they have massive amounts of money. It doesn't matter how many demonstrations you go to, how many letters you write to your congressman. Nobody needs to listen to you. In the DAO, everybody needs to listen. And when the vote comes down, the vote is a considered vote. It's not something that has just been decided by one guy. We have discourse, we have careful consideration, and then we have a vote. It's not perfect, but it's the best we can do right now.
What I'm saying is you're not stuck with a simple majoritarian system, right? You can do something more complex and interesting than that.
This sounds like a great question for the coffee area. We must move on. We have his next speaker in Australia. It's past midnight there. It's a very important discussion, but let's give a round of applause to Paul, please. Thank you so much for telling us all about VitaDAO.